I know you guys just can't wait for the first session of the festival. And ladies and gentlemen, this is Around the Book 281 and Beyond by VVS Laxman. As we all know, a stylish batsman, VVS played over 100 tests to aggregate more than 8,000 runs. Cricket fans still remember with awe his game-changing knock of 281 against Australia in 2001 at Eden Gardens. Ladies and gentlemen, Lakshman was known to be a soft-spoken man who kept his distance from controversy, and which is what makes his autobiography truly special. It's candid and reflective, happy and sad by terms, and most importantly, it is deeply insightful. He writes of dressing room meltdowns and champagne evenings, the exhilaration of playing with and against the best in the world. And today, to discuss the book, I request you to please join me in welcoming the co-author of 281 and Beyond. Please put your hands together for R. Kaushik, ladies and gentlemen. He has reported on more than 100 test matches and worked for Western India, News Time, and Deccan Herald. And he has known Lakshman since 1990. And up next, ladies and gentlemen, to provide a special insight during this session, we are very thrilled to have with us a well-known former Indian cricketer. Please welcome Murli Karthik. So, during his playing days, he was famous for his spin bowling, tenacity on the field, and relentless attitude. He's now in the commentary box as a specialist, and Murli speaks his mind and doesn't pull his punches. And I think today we can expect the same, right? Yeah. Please choose anything. Okay, then you take the first seat out there. We'll request our moderator who's joining us next to take the center stage. Ladies and gentlemen, this session is moderated by Arup Ghosh, and I request you to please welcome him. He's worked in top brands like Times of India, Hindustan Times, NDTV, Z. He launched Sahara Samay and NewsX and is now CEO and co-founder of N1 Media. Arup started a show called Silly Point with Waqar Yunus, Azruddin, Ajay Jadeja, and Ashok Malhotra, which redefined cricket programming on news channels. He was also the co-producer of Bat Chat, a series anchored by Tony Craig with a panel including Bishan Bedi, Sanjay Manjrekar, Ramesh Raja, and Arjuna Ranatunga. I request Arup to kindly take over.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you here, and alongside two wonderful guests. First, I'll raise my hand and say I have read the entire book written by Kaushik on Lakshman. It's a wonderful book, and I would suggest that please do get it and read for yourself. This is the chronicle of a great batsman, a wonderful human being, because once you know Lakshman, after reading the book, you will realize he's a very different kind of person, a very good human being. I want to begin this chat with the author Kaushik, who has covered about 100 test matches himself, who's known VVS since 1990, as the blurb says. Kaushik, first of all, please tell us about VVS Laxman, the man, which probably doesn't get into the book. Anything else that you would want to highlight?
Morning, everyone. Morning, Arup, Karthik. We were just talking off air, and Karthik was talking about how with Lakshman, what you see is what you get. It's not, he used the word facade, and he said there's no facade when it comes to Lakshman. So it's not an image of VVS Laxman, the good person. He's just what you see on television. He's what you saw when he was a player. He's what you see him now as a commentator. So I think with Laxman, he is what he is. He's what he appears to be, which I don't think is necessarily the case with all of us.
How much time did you take to write the book?
It took us about nine and a half to 10 months to get the book going. I mean, I didn't write the book. The book sort of wrote itself. I just, it is Lakshman's book, and it is his story. It is his story in his words. I sort of probably just gave shape to the book. So it is Lakshman's book, yes.
Karthik, you've known Lakshman very, very well. What we would like to know from you is, Lakshman, first of all, the human being, because going through this book, it seems very unreal reading about his beliefs, the kind of family background he had, there is a very close comparison with Rahul Dravid, but you know so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. Morning, everyone. It's a nice, I don't know, I can't call it a wintry morning so far, but yeah, it's still nice. Look, it's been summed up really well. Written by a wonderful human being who's very similar to Laxman. I've known Kaushik from the time I was a young player coming up. That hair is great. In Tamil, there is, I don't know how many people know Tamil. Over here, does anybody know Tamil? Anyway, so it's called Nerchamudi, means grey hair. So that's how he's always been called. And about a wonderful human being. And I said this off air, and I've said this many a times. People who understand the clarity of diamond and the quality of diamond know that VVS is a very small, VVS 1, VVS 2 is a very small blemish in a diamond. This human being is internally flawless. That's exactly what he is. For him, he could never understand that the world could be bad and there are bad things happening in the world as well. And that's how the book has been. When you think about Laxman, you just always wonder, oh, can he ever say a bad thing about anybody? No, he can never say a bad thing about anybody and nobody else in the world of cricket. And we are all cricketers, and I said this before as well when the book was launched. All of us have our haters and people who like us. That's how the world goes. There are only two people I know, and I'm again going to mention the same two names, and Monty would agree with me because the second name belongs to his country, is Vikram Solanki, apart from VVS Laxman, where people never, ever, ever say a bad word. So VVS Laxman is that sort of a human being, and there is no facade. So for him, if he had written the book, and I'm pretty sure it would have taken a long time for Kaushik also to convince him, he would be thinking, should I write a book? Do you think I actually have to talk about myself to the world? And in that, even if I mention something which can be somewhat or close to saying something bad about somebody, I don't think it would have taken a lot out of VVS Laxman to write that book.
Karthik, I want to ask you a specific question about that 281 at Eden Gardens. We all saw it, and it was a magnificent defining knock. One runs out of adjectives talking about the partnership between him and Dravid. But the important point is he didn't hit a triple hundred. There are other people who did, Viru, for example. But that 281 is supposedly cast in stone, and in Test Chronicles, it is one of the finest knocks. What do you feel about it, and how do you compare with the 300?
Look, completely. These are numbers. Sometimes 300 obviously is a magical figure to get. But you have to understand where India was at that point of time, where we were possibly down in the dumps, having lost the first Test match, and then being asked to follow on, and that too against that formidable Aussie juggernaut for them. And again, you have to remember that Laxman was in pain. Laxman has always been in pain right through his life. Either it's his knee or his back or whatever. So he's always been in pain. For him to be on the physio bed, not even close to playing for a big part of or before the Test match, and then to come up with an innings like that. Again, sometimes it's about giving belief to your teammates. I think those sort of knocks actually bring something out of the entire team, not just the individual. You actually feel, oh, if this man can make us believe that we can do it, we will do it. I think it was that sort of a knock way. If you look at Indian cricket after that, what India has done in the world of cricket, again, and going on to beat Australia, which was a formidable unit, and then do well overseas with all these wonderful players in the team. I think it was one of those innings which defined. 300s are obviously 300s, 10 firsts, 7 firsts, 9 firsts are all there. But any innings, which is a comeback from behind innings, and you end up going on not just to win the match, but create a system where the entire country believes, the entire set of cricketers believe that we are good enough to take on anyone. I think it was that sort of that kind of a defying knock.
That's wonderfully summed up. Kaushik, there's a quote in it from Laxman, and I read that quote about 2 or 3 times because it's a wonderful quote. He says that Rahul Dravid and I, we never batted for runs, we batted for time. For our audience, there's a lot of young people who are interested in cricket. Can you explain more of what he thought about that line?
Yeah, I mean, like Karthik summed up the game. India had lost the first Test in 3 days, and they were so far behind, 274 behind on the first innings in Calcutta. And I mean, Laxman had batted well in the first innings. He was the last guy out. So when he came back, and I think John Wright told him not to get his pads off and to go and bat at number 3, because I think the thinking then was that you needed somebody who could also force the pace, and Rahul I don't think was in really great touch at the time. So when Rahul came out to bat, India already had a reasonable sort of total on the board. I think it was 210 or something like that when Rahul came in at 6. And it was the third day of the test match when Rahul came out to bat, third evening, if I'm not wrong. And India was still behind by 64 runs. I mean, if you were to make Australia bat again, then you had to put some more runs on the board. So at that time, I don't think it would have been realistic to think about how many more runs you need, or nobody would have even dreamt of what happened eventually. You're just taking it, probably he's more qualified than me to say it, but like session by session, or hour by hour, or over by over. It's not so much about how many runs. It's about first you just want to, I think you're fighting for respectability at that stage, that you don't want to be embarrassed again. And then I think you just take the runs out of the equation. If you try and think about what the game situation is, then it becomes really tough. So you just go out, and I presume, I have not played, so I don't know what the thinking is there. But I think it's just to try and keep these, I don't know how these guys do it, but they do find ways of keeping these other
pressure out.
The surroundings and whatever else.
Kaushik, I want to come to you with another point, which I thought was very interesting, being a lover of the game. The book talks about 3 coaches in great detail. One is John Wright, and he's very effusive about John Wright. Then comes Greg Chappell, and there's no other adjective. He hates Greg Chappell and is there in those 4 pages,
That's
5 pages.
That's a tough word to use for him.
Yeah. I don't think he hates.
And then there is Gary Kirsten, who brings back the cheer. Let's talk about Greg Chappell. What did Laxman tell you? He uses the word disruptive. He was warned by Greg Blewett that watch out for this guy, he's highly disruptive. Tell us about the relationship, what Laxman felt about Greg Chappell.
Okay, so to start with, as you must have read in the book, Laxman was extremely excited when Greg Chappell was appointed the coach of the Indian team. He was an acknowledged fan of Greg Chappell, the batsman. He had a huge poster of Greg Chappell.
Everyone was when he came in.
Yeah.
Everyone was.
Yeah,
Look, it's Greg Chappell at the end of the day.
Exactly, yeah. And he spoke about how he had a poster of Greg Chappell in his bedroom almirah, and how he looked at it and sort of wanted to become that kind of a batsman. So there was, Greg Chappell came in with a lot of respect, with a lot of support, with people, and Laxman actually thought that Greg would help him take his batting to the next level. So again, like he said, and like I agreed, I think hate is like a strong word. But experiences over a period of time, I think, sort of forced Laxman to revisit his opinion of Greg Chappell, the person, according in his words, not mine. So just making it clear.
Okay, can I ask you one?
Yeah.
I'm just butting in. But when you were talking to VVS about Greg Chappell, was he emotive? Was he cool? Was he pushy? Was he aggressive while talking to you? Did it still bother him?
It did bother him. Of course, it bothered him. One of the things that we spoke about before we started the book was that it would be an honest account. It would not be something for the sake of getting into the headlines or promoting the book or promoting the potential sale of the book. So the thing that Laxman was clear about was that he would give examples. If he says Greg Chappell is disruptive, then it's not a generic sweeping statement, Greg Chappell is disruptive. So he used examples, personal examples, not something that affected anybody else, or not something that X might have told him or Y might have told him. These are things that happened with Laxman vis-a-vis Greg. So whether it was the bus leaving him behind at the team hotel in Johannesburg, whether it was Chappell telling him that he would, do you want to sit at home when you're 28 and 29, and if you're not going to open the batting, there's no place for you in the side. So those are, or the example of Rahul getting onto the front foot in Jamaica on that pitch when, I mean, there are different ways of batting. Greg obviously wanted these guys to follow Rahul's school of batting, which is not the worst way, but each one is individual. So these are personal experiences that Laxman is talking about. Those are his experiences with Chappell. So I don't think he sort of disliked the individual, the methods that did not resonate with Laxman. They did not resonate with a lot of the other Indian cricketers. there has been some generic sort of mudslinging when it comes to Chappell, but as far as Laxman is concerned, I think he has made his case through specific examples.
Karthik, let us get you in on the chat where these three coaches are concerned, and you also knew them very well. What did Laxman ever discuss this with you? And also, I want to take advantage of your presence here. What were your views on these three gentlemen who came in one after another and sort of redefined India in many ways?
Look, we had a few Indian coaches as well, and funnily when they said that we need to have a foreign coach, the idea was that, okay, there are no agendas. Sometimes as Indian coaches say, Murali Karthik, if he becomes the Indian coach, I might have my favorites. That's how you look at coaches in general. Oh, he might favor North, he might favor South. And that was one of the reasons why we had a foreign coach who's got no agendas. He just looks at everybody as a blank board and judges them. So when John Wright came, and for me, again, as a cricketer, having played at different places and having seen coaches, for me, a coach is not somebody who comes and tells you, this is how you bowl, this is how you bat. Most of the things happen by the time you get to that level, which is international level. Over there, what you need is somebody who's like a big brother, who's there, you can fight with him, you can tell him everything, and it doesn't go out. It's that sort of an individual who's got an arm around you. Because sport, as we all know, you have more bad days than good days. The greatest of them all, the Jordans, the Tiger Woods, and the Tendulkars have had more bad days than good days. So you need an arm around that sort of an individual, and John Wright was exactly that sort of a person. You could fight with him, and even the wall wouldn't know. So he was that sort of an individual. So when he went, for whatever reason, possibly after 5-6 years, everybody thinks that you need to get a fresh set of ideas. The team might be doing well. They also say that don't try and mend something which ain't broken. But nothing was broken, but he still had to go for whatever reason. And again, as Kaushik mentioned, all of us were looking forward to, because India was going through a great period then. It was on a resurgence. You talk about the Adelaide Test match. Again, the same Rahul Dravid and VVS Laxman come back from behind after Australia had plundered us on a flat Adelaide and a hot Adelaide place. So that was the kind of India we were going through. And so when Greg Chappell came, we were like, wow, man. Everybody has grown up looking at the Gavaskars, the Kapil Devs, the Greg Chappells. So when Greg Chappell came, oh, this is the best thing that can happen. And the reason, if I have to elaborate on the word disruptive, exactly opposite of what John Wright did. So for me, if you say that, wow, Arup, you're a wonderful human being, and if you go and say something behind my back, that's not a coach. And we were winning. We beat Sri Lanka, which was a strong Sri Lankan side, 6-1. We went to Pakistan, won 4-1. And then against a strong South African side, we drew 2 all and 1 match, I think tied or something like that, when the middle finger gate happened at Calcutta. So India was doing well. So suddenly for performing guys to be dropped, I think that's where everything went. All right, so the Yuvraj Singhs, the Ashish Nehras, the Zahir Khans, the Harbhajan Singhs, everybody got dropped when India was doing well. That is something, we actually went back a long way. What John Wright had tried so hard to create a culture where you created, it was not zones, it was not north-south with Saurav at the helm as well, but it was not north-south, it was India. I think that just went back because suddenly Greg Chappell had this idea that, oh, we need to get fresh legs, young legs. Fresh legs are born in the hospital every day. So everybody's got some talent. So that doesn't mean that you just take experience and skill of such wonderful players out. It was only when he pointed a finger at Sachin and when Sachin reacted that everything changed. Otherwise, whatever was happening was all the handiwork of, and again, it was not just one individual. It was the Laxmans. These guys are like, right. They've taken India on a cricketing map. So rather than being the helper, the facilitator, and the person whom you're looking up to and thinking, wow, India is here, we need to go to the other level, India actually came back. And when Gary came back, again, the smiles came because you again felt like a team. It was not, you were not watching over your back, oh, who's going to throw a knife at me? And is it coming from the coach himself?
So you're saying Greg Chappell was throwing knives?
Or arrows. It's not, just don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this, it shouldn't be misconstrued as a controversy, but that's how it was. As Kaushik mentioned, everybody, all of us felt it. If you're winning, we're winning. We're not losing.
Point.
And these are guys who are performing. They're not non-performing assets there. The guys were doing well. So it just, you couldn't trust. That's the only thing. The only factor is that you need to trust a coach, which wasn't there.
So the trust deficit was there.
Yeah, massively.
Karthik, the book talks about Laxman repeatedly saying at different points in time that I was always very introverted. I didn't speak enough. And in that
Yep.
Chappell phase, he felt that when he was pushed around, he should have asserted himself more.
Yep.
Because by that time, he was a senior player. It impacted his game. Two things
Absolutely.
I want to ask you. One is that, of course, one is a hypothetical question. Would he have made a good captain? And currently, can he qualify as a coach?
Look, captain of India, you mean?
Yes.
He would have been a wonderful captain had he been given the chance, because I've played under him at different levels, and he was just out of the Azubai, the Azharuddin mold, where he again helped people. He's always been that kind of a person. He's always a helper. A bit more assertive than Azubai, because Azubai would, if you talk about in terms of bowlers, he would just hand over the reins and say, guys, you guys are here because you've been match winners. So I'm not going to tell you how to bowl or how to set your field. That's a great way to be, because at the end of the day, anybody who's playing for India has been a match winner at a certain point and then getting to play for India. So you need to be able to set your own fields. Sometimes Azubai was seen as this laid back. Laxman was slightly more assertive than him. But again, from a wonderful school where you allowed people to express themselves. I think that's the word there. When you talk about batsmen, it's not about enforcing your style of batting or whatever. It's just about facilitating and being the enabler there. I definitely feel Laxman would have been a wonderful captain, but it's just that we were blessed with some wonderful players at that point of time, and once somebody is doing really well, so you don't want to change it. So yeah, what was the second part of the question?
Whether he would be a good coach today.
I think so, yes. Again, what did I use? I said somebody who's got an arm around you at all times, who's got that empathy for you as a cricketer himself. It's not that just because you're a commentator or you're a coach, you've never done anything wrong, you've never dropped a catch, you've never bowled a bad ball. So he's always going to be that human being. So he is already a mentor for Sunrisers Hyderabad and helps a lot of young players. So yeah, I'm pretty sure, very sure.
Kaushik, as a seasoned journalist, tell us something which the book doesn't tell, because there is a lot about Laxman, the man, about his family background, about his approach to the game, being plagued by injuries, yet he fought on. But I'm sure there's a lot of stuff which isn't in the book. Would you like to share that?
Yeah, well, like we were just chatting before we got on stage. This is essentially his story, the way he wants it out. It's an honest, true account of what he has gone through. And I think one of the things that really stood out for me during that entire journey was how passionate he was, not only about Indian cricket, which is obvious, but also about Hyderabad cricket. And, there is, Karthik just used the word laid back for Azhar, which generally is what Hyderabadis are associated with. I mean, I spent 7 years of my life in Hyderabad, and we are more sort of, okay, it's all right, things will happen, So we have to look good. It's okay if we don't win, it's fine. That is the impression people have, because you had the stylists like M.L. Jayasinghe, and then you had Tiger later on, and then you had Abbas, and you had Abid Ali, and you had these great superstars of Indian cricket who drew crowds as much for the charisma and their charm as for the cricket. They were bloody good cricketers, and but they were not consumed by cricket. Cricket was fun for them. Cricket was a release for them. They did want to win, but they were not obsessed. Or it's not like, oh, if I lost, then it's the end of the world. Not that way. So therefore, because of the talent and the quality that Hyderabad cricket possessed, and because of the fact that despite that they did not get results at the national stage, the general impression was that people from that part of the country are sort of, it's okay, chalta hai attitude types. So Laxman was sort of determined to try and do his bit to erase that image of the lazy, if you like, Hyderabadi. So, which is why he went and worked in England when he played league cricket for the first time. It was not that, I mean, he was only playing the weekends, so he had a lot of time in between. And I know the biggest influence in his career, his uncle was very upset that he was working and not, his uncle thought he was not devoting enough time to his cricket. But Laxman said that he sort of wanted to, in his own way, let people know that, look, we guys are as committed and as fiercely driven as the Mumbaikars. So because there was an entire army of cricketers from Mumbai who would go to England to play league cricket, and it was all about the Kadus Mumbaikars who give everything to cricket. And it was almost like a conscious effort that Laxman had taken upon himself to try and
change that image.
Yeah, to try and change the image.
One other quick point. Usually cricketers thrive a lot on anecdotes and they have a lot of interesting stories to tell. Many of them are funny, some of them are not. But in this book, there are very few anecdotes. There's only one instance of being sledged by Steve Waugh at the Eden Gardens when he hits a double hundred and Steve Waugh saunters in and says, so the young man must be thinking about his endorsements. But was that deliberate? What was going on in his mind when you were talking to him?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of these anecdotes that you talk about, I don't think Laxman was sledged very often on the field of play. I think he has sledged just once, and I think we all know who was at the receiving end. His fellow left-arm spinner, Oja, is the only person Laxman has sledged on the field is his own teammate in a test match. But beyond that, so he is not sledged, he's not been sledged at, so you don't get those funny, like Viru, Shoaib Akhtar kind of incident in Multan, where Shoaib kept bowling bouncers to Viru and asked him to hook, and Viru was refusing to hook. And then it got to a stage where Viru asked him, bowling dal raha hai, abhik mang raha hai. So, we don't have these kind of stories with Laxman because he didn't engage people in conversations on the field. People didn't engage with him on the field. All his off-field anecdotes, I think they were more personal in nature. He had a close set of friends, guys that he went out with during the evenings, people with whom his wavelength was different from some of the guys who came in later. So because of the fact that probably he and Dhoni didn't have a similar wavelength, for instance, there was an impression or a move to try and use Dhoni as the reason for Laxman's retirement, which obviously is not correct at all, as he makes it clear.
Karthik, the mind of a cricketer is very, very important. A lot of the pressure, everything is taken individually by the player. You played a lot of international cricket, you know it better than most. What I want to ask you is that Laxman praises Dhoni a lot for the ability to switch off. He says by the time he would come in, he would switch off completely. Probably the other person who could was Sehwag. There are two aspects here where Laxman is concerned and his mental makeup. What are your thoughts? And in general, how do cricketers take the bug out of their heads?
See, it's different, very different. Again, again, you can't typecast it as eras. Players of this era were like this. Because again, there were so many of us from that part of the time where somebody like a Laxman or a Rahul or an Anil and all these guys are very intense characters. You have to look at the character as well. They're quite intense characters whereby they carry their bat home and they have back to their rooms, and they're always switched on. They're always thinking about the game the next day. And again, you hear Sir Garfield Sobers, who always used to say, you never play cricket in your bed, it has to be played at the ground. So rather than playing everybody once in your bed and then again in the game, you're completely jaded. Again, the different school of thought for somebody like Matthew Hayden, who would be sitting on the pitch and just trying to visualize who are the bowlers, what is the place where I am, and what are they going to do. He's already played it, so it works differently for different people. And again, he's mentioned two names. Virender Sehwag was very different, who was completely switched off. MS Dhoni was intense, but calm. He exuded calm because of the fact that he didn't allow it to show. So again, different types of people. Laxman was the sort who comes from a very intelligent background where you're always taught that this is how you're supposed to be. So the way you're molded is the way you are sometimes. So he was the person who couldn't switch off, in the sense that they're always intense. Even in the room, they know that they have to go to sleep by this time. They're not into going out, or their way of unwinding is being in the room, have your meal, possibly read a book, and then think about the game again. So it's very tough to figure out what works for you. Whatever works for you, works for you.
He also speaks a lot about the modern coach who brings in a paraphernalia of people who assist, who are physios, who are masseurs, and the modern medicine. Also the fact that the way the game is analyzed in the dressing room, show them how you got out, what not to do. first of all, a contrast during your time as a player and now, because some people are saying that there's too much of overcoaching. You agree with that?
Look, it's again a balance, fine balance, isn't it? I've always been of the belief that once you use your neck top, you don't need a laptop. So, and by neck top, I mean anything above this. But again, these aids are there to facilitate. If you get too into it, obviously it's going to be detrimental. Again, if you just rely only on your head and there are things where you are steadfast about, then even that doesn't help because you don't want to move beyond what your style of thinking is. I think it has to be a fine blend of both. As you said, there's nothing wrong with the physios, which everybody needed. I think in previous generations, if they had needed, they could have avoided lots of injuries. People play a lot of cricket, so the physios are a must. The physical trainers are a must. The masseurs are a must because at the end of the day, you are literally knackered. So for you to get that nice massage where your blood is flowing again, the muscles are supple and relaxed rather than being taut when you have to go and play again. This is international cricket you're talking about. I think all that is a must. Again, the computer analysts, they do a great job. They provide lots of information on the opposition, but again, it's how you process it. It's like statistics. Do you look at it in a very cold way and say, this guy is good, this guy is bad? Or you just look at it in a way where, look, this was the situation he went in, so possibly this is how you need to analyze those stats. So similarly, those kind of data needs to be processed and analyzed in that kind of a way. But I'm all for it. It has to be a fine blend. But again, at the end of the day, if this is not processing anything, you can give everything to anybody and it's of no use.
So it's more about how the individual tackles the problem.
Absolutely, absolutely, and how he takes it, how the coaches provide it to you as well, what they think of it, what you take out of what is being provided to you, and which is very important because you need to know what works for you. At the end of the day, for any sports person, you have to understand your limitations more than your strengths. You have to understand your limitations. Once you understand your limitations, then you always excel and you're always trying to do the best of what you have.
Karthik, Kaushik, I'll come back to you with one last question. Then I'd like the audience to come up with any questions that you may have, so you can just work out what you want to ask. My last point quickly is that Laxman seems very disappointed that he never played a World Cup. He seems very disappointed that he was never taken too seriously in the limited overs. Was it because of injury? Because he himself says that his running may not have been on par. Coming at number 5 or number 6, he couldn't hit the big shots because that was not his game. What is your sense and what did he want to convey?
Obviously, he is disappointed, and I think even today it rankles if there is a short regret list that he has, and I'm sure it will be a short regret list, then right on top of that will be the fact that he never played a World Cup, which I suppose is to be expected. I don't think his problem was that he was not picked for the World Cup so much as the circumstances around which his exclusion took place, because leading up to the World Cup, he had a fantastic run in one-day cricket. He was, when West Indies came to India just before the World Cup in 2002, he was a leading run scorer across the teams. And then India went to New Zealand. It was a terrible series. India lost 5-2. Both the victories came because Sehwag made hundreds in both those games. That's the only games that India won. Everybody had a bad series. And the fact of the matter is that 2002, when India was in West Indies, and from that time onwards, Laxman is starting to work on his one-day cricket to the extent possible. I mean, he's, like you said, he's the first to admit that he's not the quickest on the field. He's not the quickest runner between the wickets. But he did what he could under the circumstances, and he was given the confidence that his progress was along the right lines, that he was doing what was expected of him. So he had no reason to believe that he wasn't doing the right things, and when he was backing that up with runs, then sort of he felt that, all right, so this is my time.
But safe to assume, safe to assess that despite all his effort, and no matter how many times he was injured and he had a serious knee operation, but there is a feeling that he sort of conveys that the game was unfair to him. The selection committee was unfair to him. The coach didn't talk to him enough, whether it was Saurav or it was any other captain. There was that gap.
There was a gap, yeah, and it is exactly the reasons that I outlined to you, that they told him these are the things you need to do, and he kept doing those things, and he was given the sort of confidence that yes, all right, so you are progressing along the way that we want you to, and he was getting the runs. So I mean, his thing is that I should have been in the team, but if you thought I was not good enough, you should have just told me that I was not good enough instead of
No, but how is
encouraging
it that suddenly Australia and Pakistan, he was batting at number 3 and against the tougher teams, he was batting at number 3 and getting runs. So,
He made
look,
three.
again, if not to mince any words, it definitely you feel. For somebody to have played 86 games and the way he played it, it's tough that, if I have to be brutally honest, there were lesser players who played ahead of him and played World Cup. So that's how it is. He should have definitely played. 2002, as you mentioned, suddenly 2003, 2004, we went to Australia and Pakistan. He was batting at number 3 and again getting runs. So suddenly the person who couldn't move or wasn't the best fielder, Australia actually exposes you because those are bigger grounds and those are faster guys. If you miss it, if you're late by 2 seconds, Mike Hussey will take a second run. So suddenly you can't become Usain Bolt from not being able to run just a year ago. So I as a fellow cricketer and a fan of the game and fan of Indian cricket, I've always felt bad that Laxman didn't play a World Cup. For somebody to have played, close to 90 ODIs, not to play a World Cup.
And just on that, his last one day came out of nowhere after about a year and a half. He was nowhere in the picture. India had lost the series in South Africa. He was just flown out for one game. He was the vice captain of the test match team. He was flown out for one game after 1.5 years for a dead rubber. Okay, he got out for 0, so that is pretty much what Laxman's, in his opinion, his one-day career was. But it just sums up, I mean, what was the thinking there? 1.5 years he has not played one-day cricket. India has lost the series, and you fly him out for one ball.
There are lots of anecdotes with Laxman. It's just that he is not mentioned, and one of them happens to be with me myself because we were in New Zealand, the same trip he's talking about just before the World Cup. He had done well, I had done well, so both of us were expecting that we're going to be in the World Cup squad. Suddenly, arm dropped from. There were 2 test matches where the scores were 92, 97, 99, 101. These were the inning scores, not an individual score. So suddenly, just before the ODI series, arm dropped without any reason, and I'm asked to go back home and play a first-class game, which is New Zealand to Delhi and Delhi to Hyderabad. So Laxman is the one who's consoling me. He says, it's okay, you're competing against Harbhajan and Anil, it's okay. You did well, you did better than Anil, but it's okay. So I take a flight back home. I reach, and behind me, there's another flight coming, and who's on the flight? VVS Laxman. We are playing the same game, Railways versus Hyderabad, and then suddenly we are told that we have to go from here to West Indies on an A tour for 2.5 months to play their domestic competition. And he was in no mood because the World Cup team had been made. And he told me, he said, look, I'm never ever going to give you advice because the same thing happens to me at the end of the day. I was consoling you and I needed somebody to console me on the same team.
And who was the captain?
Captain, everybody knows who the captain is. It's got nothing to do with the captaincy. It's just that both of us, sometimes they say, don't give advice.
Okay, any questions from the audience, please? Any questions?
Somebody there.
Hello.
Please
sir,
go
my
ahead.
question is to Mulli Karthik. Sir, what is the contribution of great Chappell in Indian cricket and about your experience in the commentary box as a commentator?
We've already spoken about the first bit of your question, haven't we?
Yes, sir. What about your as your experience in the commentary box?
Look, it's outstanding that in 2014 I quit all formats of the game and immediately as a cricketer sometimes you're at the crossroads because from the time you've had your sensibilities all you do is play. There are some who drop out of school, there are others who you are always wondering what are you going to do next because after a few people are lucky to play till 37, 38, there are others who quit very early. Sport is such. So to know exactly what you're doing post that, and the fact that I have been covering international cricket right from the time I quit playing and across the board and across countries, I think it's a great experience because at the end of the day, you're extremely grateful for what the sport did for you. And then you're part of it. You're part of it. It's not as if you're languishing somewhere and you're not working. So to get to work again on the sport you played and at that international level, I think it's a great feeling. working with some of the best minds in world cricket, people who played against you, and some of the legends who, once upon a time, you sat in stands and watched them. So to work with a Chappell there, when you, as a kid, were watching him from a stand and watching him get 100 against West Indies, and then to play golf with him, or to sit with Mr. Gavaskar, or work with a Matthew Hayden, whom we all regarded and cherished as an opponent, I think it's a very grateful place to be.
Quickly, please.
The question is for Kaushik. Kaushik, a player like Laxman, who's not a motor mouth, you have to really guard him to speak. How difficult was it? Some things you wanted him to say that he was quiet about, and you had to make him include in his book.
I think so much had happened in his life from the time he started playing cricket till the time we started writing the book that he had forgotten, or he had not forgotten, but they were sort of pushed back to the recesses of his mind. So as we started speaking, there were times when he would suddenly say that I have not thought about this for 15 years or 20 years. There were certain instances, certain episodes that he would narrate when he would get emotional. So we would start off with probably saying, today we will discuss this subject for about an hour or so, and we will end up talking for 5 hours, and we would not even have talked about that subject. So he was not a reluctant talker. It was difficult to get his time because obviously he was busy with a lot of things, and I also was working at the time, so it was a little bit difficult from that point of view. But when he got talking, he was very clear about what he wanted to say. He didn't always say it. He knew what he wanted to say. Eventually, maybe after 3-4 days, we would get to that point. But yeah, it was not very difficult to get him to talk.
Next, please.
Good morning.
Hello.
Karthik sir, I have a question for you. I know you have a love affair with Wankhede. Which is just
Can you be slightly louder, please? I'm getting old.
yeah, Karthik sir. We all know you have a love affair with the Wankhede. So, which is a special performance for you? A Test match versus Australia in 2004, or the ODI performance versus Australia in 2007, when you were knocking with Zahir Khan?
It's a tough one, yeah. I was not playing either game, so I don't know. It was only very close, possibly half an hour, 45 minutes before the game, I knew that I was going to be playing.
Which the Test match?
Both. Because I'd hurt my thumb before the ODI. For me to get a world record figures in that game was special because they were 120 for 1, if I'm not mistaken, Australia. And to be getting that and be on a hat-trick twice during the course was very special. In fact, sometimes you teach young kids, and I think Monty will agree with me, you get greedy. It was 6 for 17. If I had bowled 2 good deliveries, it wouldn't have been 6 for 27. But I just got greedy. I thought, let me go for the 7th wicket, and ended up giving 11 more runs. So that tells you a story. But again, Test matches are special. That was the only Test match we won that year. And the Australians were there to get the final frontier, which they did. If you look at it, it didn't make it wouldn't have changed the course of the series. It's just that was the only Test match we won, and we were only defending 103. And not just international cricket. Even in first-class cricket or List A, Wankhede has always been a very special place because of the bounce you get as a spinner. Over there, that red soil is just outstanding to bowl.
Karthik, one more question for you. Actually, we were following you since the English county time. Now we see that there is a less restriction.
Okay, you were what?
Since 2003, I am following the county season.
Following, okay.
Yeah. That time we see that the Indian players were allowed to play the T20. Like you have the good extended Somerset and the Middlesex. But now these days with the restrictions of BCCI, the Indian players can't play in the overseas T20 leagues. So what is your point of the view? I think you are the lucky one to play the T20 all over the world. But now these players are not able to play. So what are your viewpoints that should BCCI able to make the players play in the overseas league or not? What the BCCI is doing is right or not?
Look, it's a tough one because you have to understand where both parties come from. I was just lucky that the years I played county cricket, where you have to get a no objection from the BCCI to go and play. And I got it for all 3 formats because I started early before IPL hit India. But what happens is that IPL is a very completely different league, and the BCCI feels that the Indian players don't get enough value in the T20 competitions at other places. So it's just a question of protecting your own value at the end of the day as international cricketers. For me, again, I was just lucky that I was there and I could play those 9 years without any what should I say, problems. Although last year I was told that from next year onwards you can't play T20, but that was my end of county cricket.
Next, please.
Good morning. My question is from Kaushik sir. So what are you working on next? What is your next book?
Nothing at the moment. Let's go and think about
Okay.
it. Yeah.
And my question is also to Murli Vijay sir. Sir, your first innings you had your first innings as a cricketer. You now having your second innings as a commentator, sitting in commentating box. What is about your third innings or the next innings? Are you also going to, publish any book or doing something any further creative?
Third innings will be my grave, ma'am.
Okay.
No,
Thank
I'm
you.
not. Look, I'm not somebody who wants to write a book. Again, it's a tough one. And I've always said this. When you write a book, you need to be brutally honest. And when you get brutally honest, you burn a lot of bridges. And I've burnt enough in my life. So don't want to burn any more. I actually am swimming from one corner to another corner. So I would rather walk for a bit more. That's about it.
Thank you,
Karthik,
sir.
I have one last question for you, which
And
is...
I didn't do anything important enough to write a book. So.
In the book, Laxman praises you a lot and says that you're one of the best spinners he's played alongside or against. Kapil Dev, in another book, which is on the art of spin bowling, praises you a lot. But they all hint at something else happening where your test career was concerned. Would you like to say anything on that?
Nothing at all. Look, it's always easy to paint a story for yourself once your days are done. The most important thing which you need to understand is that in a country of 1.5 billion, I was just lucky. Possibly there were a million more who were better than me who never got to play the game and never got to play for India. So I was just lucky that I played from 99 to 2008. And that's about it, as blessed as it can be. Otherwise, if you start... That's why I feel that there's no point. There's no point at all. You will always have a story which doesn't have to be right. So
Okay.
you can always paint a sorry picture for yourself, and that's not needed.
Any more?
Mic check. Hello. My question for Kartik sir. So as you mentioned in the first few minutes of the session, you said Laxman sir is quite soft-spoken and people would not speak ill of him and he would also not speak ill of him. So with such quiet character, how did he get on with his team? Because I myself is I'm quite introverted girl. So what was his mantra to gain success in his life?
Look, I think sometimes honesty comes to the fore, isn't it? If you're honest and your intentions are always good, it's in your face. Sometimes your face is the biggest, or the biggest mirror of your heart. And with Laxman, I feel that's what stood out. His good image was not a facade, and that's what I keep mentioning. There are sometimes you act humble or are you humble? There are two different things. If you're genuinely humble, you don't have to act humble. So he was genuinely a good guy. So when you're genuinely a good person, I think it comes to the fore and everybody loves you. It's very tough in sports, in the world of cricket, that not one person says anything bad about you. It's a tough one. I wish I could be in that position. When something like that happens, just pride. It's not about being introverted. That's how you are. But as long as your intentions are well meant, I think you'll have lots of friends.
My question is to Kaushik. Kaushik, the process of writing an autobiography with a cricketer who you're also close to, what are the challenges that you go through to ensure that it's not your voice which comes out, to keep your voice out of the book? Is that a challenge, or it's just a process that you switch off being Kaushik and you're just the voice of VVS Laxman?
Yeah, no, I mean, once you understand that it is not your book, it's not your story, yeah, like I said, you channelize the words probably because that's what we are supposed to be slightly better than these cricketers at. Not necessarily with all these guys now coming and taking over the commentary boxes and writing columns, but they don't have probably the time because they are so busy. So we do it for them. But it's his story. So once you realize that it is his story and it is his narrative, then I don't think it's a challenge at all.
Any more? Yes, Pranab.
Huh? Nothing to read.
Hello, sir. So my question is for Karthik, sir. So, which is your favorite sports book and why?
Look, I've not been a big reader of sports books, but I just read a book on Tiger, which was, I think, a couple of guys had done an intensive research on him, the person, and whatever happened in his life, and I really enjoyed that book. I'm forgetting the name of the authors. There are two of them.
Pataudi
Outstanding
or
book. Huh?
Pataudi or Woods?
Huh?
Pataudi or Woods?
Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods. Because I'm a big golfing fan, so and none bigger than Tiger to try and understand the mind of somebody. And again, in sports, they talk about the number of hours you practice and what makes you work so well. Because I've played alongside a Sachin Tendulkar and a Ricky Ponting, and you see the way they practice. And later on, 1 year with Virat Kohli and what makes him tick. So you're always, as a cricketer who's finished and trying to analyze the game, you always try and figure out what makes these guys so good. So that's why I read that book and I thought it was a wonderful book. I'm forgetting the name. It's a big book, read and just Tiger Woods there. So it's an outstanding book to read.
One last question, please.
Okay, Murli, this is Shumon Ray from Republic TV. I have two questions. One,
if you're asking me as a TV, then there's no answer. And if you're looking for something, I'm really no answer there.
No, just about this. During your time when Saurav Ganguly was the captain, do you think many of the players were underutilized? For example, yourself, because somebody like Bishan Singh Bedi always said that here is a spinner who has been always underutilized. And the second question is, if you were to write a book, what would be the title of the book, and would you like Kaushik to write that book?
See, the first one I've already answered, that there's no point in painting a sorry picture for yourself or whatever picture. So it's whatever people feel they can feel. I've never felt it. In fact, I have spent so many years playing with Saurav in IPL. So I've not felt that. Secondly, I know definitely what the title of my book would be. It would be called The Axe Effect. With 16 comebacks, I definitely would call it The Axe Effect. If I want Kaushik to write it, of course. It's somebody who I've spent a lot of time. It's very difficult. Like, Laxman is a reluctant talker. He's also, see how many questions you need to probe and probe and probe, and he hardly gives you anything. So he can write Dhoni's book as well.
But Axe Effect, you might actually patent.
That's a magnificent title,
Yeah,
The Axe Effect.
The Axe Effect.
Last question, please.
Murli, I'm Pranav here. Two questions rather. First question will be, would you look for VVS as a partner in cricket, as on the cricket field, or as a commentator's box? I think you have hands down won him over him in the commentator's box. So how do you analyze his camaraderie with yourself? And second, how do you analyze the T20 matches, that series that India won, and the forthcoming ODI that is expected, and where do you put your money on?
I'll answer the first bit because the second bit is not needed. I'm not here to answer about India versus West Indies. The first bit is I would take Laxman as a partner anywhere. Combox, life, trenches, cricket, anywhere. But the second bit, we are here for Laxman's book, and that's what it is about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll wrap this session up. Many thanks to Karthik and Kaushik for being here with us. Kaushik has written a great book. He's, of course, assisted. And I would recommend that please read it, because you'll be reading about the mind of a great batsman, a great player. Many thanks to Karthik for coming over and sharing his thoughts and views. In his time, he's been a great bowler. He's been praised by some big legends, but for some strange reason, I remember his battle against Pollock when he was batting and Pollock was bowling, and they kept at it, and he batted for a long time. I don't know why it sticks to my mind, talks about his tenacity and aggression. Thank you, both of you.
The only thing which I've still not understood understood is that why was this book 281 and beyond not priced at 281 rupees? Any questions for, any answers for that?
The publishers are up next. I think you can check with them.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much for that wonderful session and a brilliant start to the festival. Can we have a big, big round of applause for all the three out here? And Murli, we have a special request from some students from Amity who are here. They want a group photograph with you, if that's okay. Can I request the students from Amity to please come forward? Murli, can I request you to come here, if that's okay?